and we are back with our final presenter. Let me bring in Karl Ortmanns. Karl, how are you doing?
Doing well. I didn't realize it was the last one, so no pressure, and everybody probably wants to get back to their day to day and listen to Armando wrap this up.
For sure. What we are definitely here to hear what you've got to say. So hopefully nobody's bailing early. Really interested in this topic. Looks like you're bringing the doctor metaphor in with your hot take. So let's let you get started and hear what you got to talk about.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. So to try to keep it as condensed as possible, the question was interesting fact, and I think this is the best one that I can come up with. I've competed in one and actually won a strongman competition. Now it was a very different time. I was a very different body shape at the time, but in terms of interesting fact, that's probably the best one that I can give you. So I have the fortunate ability, and I've been lucky enough to lead some pretty amazing teams. So on the sales side and marketing, etc. But today, I want to introduce this notion of if you want to excel, listen to your doctor. So let's give a bit of context. For me personally, I've had the fortunate ability to lead sales teams and enablement, and there's one thing that did become incredibly clear as I was going through, listening and learning, and discovery was all very much eye centric leading into a demo. So I'll give you sort of my three takes, and then we'll jump into it and hopefully just tell you a little bit of a story. But the first thing is discovery going into a demo. If you really challenge yourself, it's very eye centric. It's what do I want to get out of it versus creating a conversation where I'm going to create a two-way dialogue between myself and the potential customer to try to understand if we're a fit for each other. Because if your insight, if your excitement is much higher than that of the customers, you're probably going down a path that is no return, and you're going to have to really work to try to get it versus having you both arrive at the same idea. And then the second part of this is because the question was one sided, we were asking the wrong types of questions. We were asking questions that drove us and me, that I was able to do my checklist. And then the third one that sort of comes to this in the doctor analogy is you can't prescribe something until you diagnose it. So that's the origin of this context today. So in short, you have to prescribe before you diagnose. And also, discovery is typically looked at as a destination, not a journey. Discovery is happening in every single conversation all the time, and you're looking for those nuggets. And then the third piece here is demos are context, not content. And I'll explain a little bit about that. So, actually, Joe, before I jump into this, I have a question for you. If you're comfortable with this, if I was to ask you what what are the traits of a bad salesperson? What are the immediate things that come to mind? What are those words or descriptions, or
Mm,
how would you describe it?
a bad salesperson. Rigid, uh, uncreative. Uh, Not persistent. I'm coming up with interesting words maybe, but I'm looking for the guy who or the girl who really just isn't interested in experimentation and listening, right? And being able to
Hmm.
be constructive in feedback and things like that. I don't know. Is that right for you? Is that on the
Interesting.
same?
Yeah, hey, look, there's no
Yeah.
right or wrong answer. It's just what do you come to, and what is
Mhm,
Jimmy mentioned something in the previous session. People don't like to be sold to; they like to buy
mhm.
stuff. So what you said, how I internalize, you kind of gave this notion of somebody who's pushy and weren't listening, and it was all about
Mhm.
them.
Yeah,
I'm sort of paraphrasing, but it seemed
for
like
sure.
you were trending towards this. So if I'll ask you one more question, and then I'll, not to make this a two-way dialogue.
Mm.
Um, if I was to ask you, what are the traits or the qualities of a good salesperson? What would you say?
Well, without just making all of my comments opposite, obviously somebody who is willing to listen and collaborate, right? But definitely somebody
Yeah.
who is excited about what they're selling, and is somebody who is excited about sharing that value with other people, right? And I think that's really
Yeah.
what you want out of a sales rep, right?
Yeah, and it's if I can pull this up is maybe the best way to say it is somebody who's paying attention, they're listening, they're taking notes, and they're actually adding to the conversation, and it's trying to create a two-way dialogue. So, but thank you very much for
Yeah.
for jumping
No
in here,
worries.
because those are the two stereotypes when you start to think of salespeople, right? Like there's this dirty word around sales, but the question is it done incorrectly? When it's done correctly, it's the best profession in the world potentially. However, let's take a second step. So back in the very first Eloqua conference that I went to, Jay Bear stood up and he delivered this piece of information, and it's really stuck with me ever since. The difference between selling and helping is just two letters. And when he said it to me initially, I was like, "What the heck does that mean?" And I physically had to take my pen out and write it down. I was like, "What is he talking about?" But ultimately, what you're trying to do is, if you're just selling to them, you're not listening. But if you're helping them understand the problem, helping them understand a solution, helping them understand there's a better way, it changes your context. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And if you consider the type of sale, the first one is this: if you're going to buy a MacBook, I'm just going to use a MacBook, or any computer, it can be whatever you want. If you're going in to buy it, do you need any help? Are you asking questions, or is somebody actually trying to help provide you insight? Likely not. You probably have your best examples set up, and you're probably ready to go in and just understand what you want, and you're really trying to decide maybe one or two things. So the salesperson there inside the store doesn't typically do a lot of qualification. But if you consider, if you're going to buy a truck or a vehicle, as an example, there's a component to it that it's a touch and a feel. And the questions are going to be something like, how much is your payment going to be? What's the best package for you? They're going to be trying to sort of shift you in towards one of the sales. Or it could be, hey, look, you know what? I'm at my quote. I'm one vehicle away from my quota. I'm just going to try to drive something down your throat just so I can get the sale. Or the third one is, consider something like breadcrumbs or a software where, you know what, I need to solve a problem and I don't know all the details. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'm going to try to give good discovery. I'm going to try to help you come to the conclusion, but I'm also going to provide value. And the reason that I'm saying this is because a SaaS is not something you can typically touch, but you're going to play with and through a screen. So how do you get to making sure that you're asking the right questions? Well, think about your last doctor. Think about the last time you're at the doctor's and you go in. Did the doctor immediately throw a demo down your throat, or they immediately share all the stuff that they can tell you all things about? No, they didn't. Recently I actually got cut with a skate blade, and I went into the doctor and I had to get some stitches. It was fine. But anyways, what happened is the doctor goes, the questions the doctor asked me was, what happened? How does this feel? What were you doing then? When this happened, what did you feel? Where did it occur? They were asking me questions that were allowing the doctor to translate all kinds of information so that they can get a good understanding. And if you start to think about that, what you're doing, the doctor's doing, is they're diagnosing. And that piece a lot of times is missed by a lot of salespeople. And let's consider the types of questions that they ask. They ask questions like what and how. They don't ask why. So, sorry, Joe, if I can say one more thing to you, if I can ask you one last question. Sorry about that.
No
So,
worries.
if I was to ask you this, Joe, and say, hey, Joe, why did you wear that shirt today?
I
What's your
wanted to,
immediate reaction? Is
yeah,
it
like what's my reaction to the question, or what's my
Yeah?
answer to the
What's
question?
your reaction? Do you
My
feel like it's a good question, or do you
uh,
become
it
like a
feels a
little?
little like, why are you judging my shirt, Carl?
Exactly. So the second part of it is like, if I was to say, hey, Joe, that's a great shirt. How come you chose that one today?
Yeah, it puts me more at peace. I
Right.
feel like having a conversation.
That's right. And that's the notion here. Thank you very much. So
Mm.
that's the whole notion of it, is why questions are accusational by nature. Because I'm asking you, why didn't you do this? And you think of it as a parent. Why did you do that? This first question parents ask is, why did you do that? And kids go, I don't know. However, if you think about it from a sales context, if you start asking them, hey, what is it the solutions are going to do? Hey, how would we get this done? If you start to ask what and how questions, it provokes and drives engagement and conversation. If you ask why questions, it's going to put up a wall. Now, why questions can be they can be leveraged. In that diagnosis stage, though, what and how questions are going to be the best ones, because ultimately what you're doing is you're taking them through some sort of funnel, right? Tell me more about this. Can you give me an example? How long has it been a problem? What have you tried to do? If you remove that why question, you'll get so much more information, because ultimately what you're trying to do is do that diagnosis. Because the next part of it, your prescription, is a demo. Now, here's what a demo is not. A demo is not context, or sorry, it is not content, it is context. The demo is the output of everything that you have just learned from that customer, and you're trying to explain to them how you're going to make their life, their world, their situation better by using what it is that you have. A demo is not, let me hit play. I'm going to take you 23 minutes through this, and if you have any questions, just stop me. A demo is not, let me show you everything about everything as part of this. The demo is the output of the questions and the insights that you learn to show the customer that, one, you're paying attention, two, you can solve their problem, and three, you can make their life better. And if you can do all of those things collectively, that will translate into a higher win percentage for you and a much happier customer, because you're going to be able to uncover a lot of their challenges, and you're trying to take that context that you learned and use the content of your demo to bring it together so that you're able to hit a home run with your customers. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you can't make your customer look like a hero, it's going to be a hard sale. So in practice, if I could give you 3 things to walk away from at the end of today's session: act like a doctor patient, ask those what and how questions, alleviate and remove the why questions. And if you consider your whatever you're doing, if you have one tomorrow, think about the demo that you're doing. It's an output. It's not the destination. It is an output, not the destination. The demo is not where the deal ends. It is just a piece as part of your demo, or sorry, as part of the entire sale and the destination. So if I leave you with one key takeaway: in sales, as in medicine, a prescription before diagnosis is a mistake in the arts. Make sure that you're asking very good questions. Make sure that you're diagnosing what that problem statement is before you start to give them a prescription. Because if you just try to prescribe without understanding, it's going to be really hard. So I know it was 10 minutes. Joe, how did I do for timing?
You're doing great. Yeah, let's. I have a couple comments real quick to talk about, and then we can wrap up. But look, this is like, now we're in like 200 level or 300 level sales courses here, right? Now we've established, of course, we need to be asking the right questions, but now we're talking about removing certain verbiage from your questions to avoid that kind of contentious stance that you potentially get from your prospects. And so I'm curious, because like, look, how many times have I had a prospect that was just like, yes, no, no, I don't, like those type of one word answers. You
Yeah.
feel like you're banging your head on the wall, but maybe it's because I'm positioning the question wrong, right?
Mm.
I'm curious how you've seen that like develop for yourself in your sales career. Was there a light bulb moment where you were like, I'm shooting myself in the foot here and I didn't realize it?
Yeah. So the question that typically shows up is this one: Hey Joe, does this make sense?
Hmm.
Hey Joe, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Nobody's, if you're in a room of a bunch of people, what are they going to say? Actually, you know what, Karl, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I don't know why we're here. Whatever you just said makes no sense. What they're going to do is go, yeah, that's fine, because they're just going to try to move on as part of their day. Versus if you shift that context, again, the context of the word, or even the makeup of that question, and say, hey, Joe, we talked about X, Y, and Z. What I showed here would translate to one of those things. How could you see yourself using this? Is this hitting the mark? And does this allow you to remove X, Y, or Z off your plate so that you can do these other things?
Right.
It's the makeup of the question. So for me personally, it was that aha and actually I had a coach say to me, he said, hey, you know what are you expecting out of that answer?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, because I saw other people do it. Hey, does that make sense? Yeah, fine, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the question was, what did you want from that question? What are you trying to get out of it? So if you think about your questions as being, there's a question under a question. There's always a question under the question. I'm going to ask you a question, but there's one that's underneath of it that's I'm trying to get to. So
Yeah.
so determine your questions in that step and think of it as the layers.
Yeah, I think is a great way to think about it. You've got to be smart about what you're asking and not just throwing stuff over the fence. So I love the approach, Carl. We are up against time. I think everyone wants to jump over to see Armando's closing remarks on stage one. So thank you for the time. It's been a wonderful presentation, and hope we can connect soon.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. And for everyone else, like I mentioned, if you want to jump over to stage one so we can watch the final closing remarks, that would be great. Thanks for sticking with me on our sales track and have a great day.